that didn't bother me. We laughed about it, the squad laughed about it, and I felt good about that. I felt
Joe
good that
Paterno, the winningest college football coach in the nation. He looks like the saxophone player at an Italian wedding. He sounds like Peter Falk before the diction lessons.
Be honest with me.
And his players affectionately call him the Rat when he's not around.
Exception, safety.
He's the winningest college football coach in the nation. And he tells jokes, too.
Back where I was in Brooklyn, that was a different problem. You know, safety and protection was the one thing you thought about going to school. Because I was an honor student. Yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, but...
Who is Joe Paterno, really? Well, to listen to members of his coaching staff and a few current and former players, that's a fairly complex question.
Coach Paterno.
You would be asking me about Coach Paterno.
What kind of person is Coach Paterno?
Well, I'm a little crazy, that's what, to be frank with you.
Coach Paterno, it's tough.
I can get emotional at times.
What kind of person is Coach Paterno? He's
Wait a minute, what did you say?
Joe Paterno is very, stop it, let me think about it.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good coach.
Some people just think refer to him as a rat.
Most of my coaches think he's Coach Patrick.
And then I looked at him one day and I said, yes, he does resemble a rat, sort of.
What kind of person is Coach Paterno?
Browning said, I'm frustrated.
Coach Paterno is not really a fatherly type.
No, I don't think he's fatherly, and
I need steadier hands, maybe.
I really don't think he's very disciplinary coach either.
He is a very easy person to work for.
Coach Paterno is a fairly authoritarian type of person.
And I don't particularly care whether I'm a brother or an uncle or what have you.
I think his first approach to football is that he thinks that it should be enjoyable.
It's a game. Enjoy it.
At Penn State, football's supposed to be fun.
I try to tell our kids, look, love your opponents.
He feels that football is fun.
Well, I'm a little crazy.
When you go into a game, you know that you never have to be afraid of not being prepared.
But winning isn't everything.
What kind of person is Coach Paterno?
Well, I always thought he was going to be real good.
Coach Paterno.
I'm a much different coach now than I was when I first started to be a head coach.
Joe Paterno is very,
I'm not quite as fond of you as I used to be. I only heard him yell once.
He sets up guidelines, but they're not strict enough so that we won't follow them.
Coach Paterno.
Rip Engel used to say all the time.
Joe couldn't run and he couldn't pass.
You know, Abraham Lincoln said even this will pass.
Coach Paterno likes me. Oh, you better cut that.
Mamma mia!
Well, it's obvious that Joe Paterno is many things. But it's also obvious that we've been having a little fun with him by taking these quotes out of context. Now, we can do it, but the press better not. But that's still another side of Joe Paterno. You can have fun with him. And how many football coaches can you say that about? But as for capturing the real Paterno, let's just take one of those random quotes and, well, let's see, how about this one? He can't run and he can't pass. Now, let's listen to the entire quote, especially the part we left out.
Joe couldn't run and he couldn't pass, but all he could do was think and win. Well, actually,
that's former Penn State head coach Charles Rip Engel, reciting a quote from the late sports writer Stanley Woodward. Rip is talking about Joe Paterno's quarterbacking days at Brown University. He and his brother George played for Rip and were popularly known as the Gold Dust Twins.
Of course, they were both good football players. Now, Joe, he was a very adequate quarterback. He was a spirited runner. He only weighed 170 pounds. He followed instructions so well, and he was a quick thinker, and he just was an outstanding young man. And he was always a resourceful player, and he just never gave up. Now, in our last game at Brown, I'll never forget it.
Many people think we're twins, and we're not. He's older than me, and I make sure everybody knows that.
Joe's brother, George Paterno, a former running back and now the color analyst for the Penn State Football Television Network.
High school, and therefore I continued on in high school, and then when he got out, we joined forces at Brown University under the beautiful guidance of Rip Engel. Joe, even at that age, had a great sense of responsibility. He always wanted to speak out, affection, problem. and whatever. He's very well read. He was an English major. You know, using this vehicle, this became a natural media for him to express his philosophy.
A reader, a thinker, a classical music buff, a humanist with an Ivy League degree in English literature, no less. Intellectual football coach, and even more improbable, a winning intellectual football coach.
At Penn State, it's not, they go after the student athlete.
Former student and football player Dan Wallace, now in real estate.
They refer to them as prospective student athletes. I think it's good because it's changed the image of football. And that's what Joe is. He's an innovative coach. He's a real thinker. And maybe he came up with that term. I can't tell.
They appreciate that. We try to sell them that they get the best of both worlds. That they can get an awfully fine education at Penn State. And number two, you can play on a great football team. So that you can have the best of both worlds. And that takes a little bit more effort, but you get a lot more out of it.
Still, you don't have football as your number one thing. Joe will always say in a meeting, he'll say, fellas, you got three things to experience at Penn State. You have your academic life, you have your football life, and you have your social life. And once that's the exact order I want you to keep them in.
An emphasis on academics. Praiseworthy, noble in fact, but does it answer the question? What is it about a reading, thinking, idealistic, romantic, humanist, and classical music buff that enables him to take student athletes and produce winning football teams? Well, maybe that question can be best answered by starting at the beginning of a season. Way back at spring practice, the incubation period really, when the unique Paterno program of mind and bodybuilding first takes root, mainly through the daily ministrations of his coaching staff.
Okay, all right, let's try it. Aiming point, that armpit. Okay, break. You still step with this foot, cross that, except you strike right here, and then as soon as you hit, you're thinking about raking, bring those hands, raking, and work vertically. Break, sit, hit. Now rake up, rake up, rake up, rake up, rake up.
Coach Paterno has taught me as an assistant coach, well, he's taught me a number of things. He's taught me a great deal about the X and O's of football, about the planning and the preparation for different teams and the way we'll adjust our defense.
Sure. Let's go. Set. Go.
For each game. And I feel that he looks to us as assistant coaches to try to evaluate what he plans to do and try to criticize and come up with maybe just little different ways of doing the same basic things that he's thinking about.
Do it again, right there. Okay, that's better. Now get further back, right there. Let's try it. Go ahead. Come on, under control. Okay, now let's get back.
Go, tighter, tighter, tighter. Go for the ball, go for the football. All right, that's not too bad. Hustle up.
He's also taught me what it takes probably to coach in the league as Penn State is in, and the amount of work and dedication and the time you'll have to spend in preparation for these games.
Screen. Head up.
I believe Coach Paterno, the reason Coach Paterno has such good football teams here at Penn State is because of the ball players he gets to come to school here, come because they want to accept the challenge.
The thing I tell our people is this: look, fellas, 10 years from now you guys may get together. Then you're going to start talking about the old coach. And you'll say a lot of things about me, but you're never, ever going to get together and sit around and say, you know what? Paterno was a good
What's the matter with me? I don't have much to say.
Realized how good we wanted to be. He never made us work hard enough to realize what great potential we had. We could have been great.
Now, did you guys watch them? Did you watch that? You learn from one another now, right? You learn from one another. Did you watch him? Go, tighter, tighter, tighter. In order to play man-to-man defense, you got to move your feet.
You're not moving your feet.
Any kind of pass defense, you got to be moving, okay? If you're standing still, they're going to blow right by you.
What kind of steps? Short, choppy steps. 1,000 of them. Between there and there, 1,000 of them. Move them.
Balance that stance. Don't give anything away. On the whistle.
You know where you are at that moment? Flat on your back.
Now, with football, you do not play on your back. Sometimes you're going to be knocked on your back. You got to think about getting up.
Going to sting them, okay? Maximum effort, okay, with the minimum amount of wasted motion. That's clinic talk. You like that? All right. Okay.
Going to take away the inside. We're not going to get beat deep, right? We're going to try and maintain a 5-yard cushion at all times.
Relax, relax.
Now, under control. Under control.
Hustle, hustle. Keep your head up. Keep driving. You're getting tired. Hustle. A good broken field runner doesn't get tired.
I told the squad today, I said, I'm sick and tired of watching you guys practice. I'm anxious to see you play. I know you guys are tired of practicing, and I'm tired of watching you practice. I'm tired of seeing drills and everything else. I'm anxious to see how they're going to play.
Game time. That time when all the hard work, the discipline, the planning, and the practice pays off. This is the day when, according to Paterno, football is supposed to be fun. Former quarterback, the undefeated 1968 and 69 Penn State teams, Chuck Burkhart.
As far as Paterno's views on football is fun, I think really what he wants to say is that the day of the game is fun. I think if you asked any of the players up there what practices were like, what preseason conditioning was like, that wasn't fun.
Hey, look,
You're there to...
we're going to work as hard as we know how during the week, but when we play on Saturday, we're going to enjoy it. It's only a game. It isn't life or death. This business about, winning is the only thing and that kind of nonsense. It's nothing. It's a game. Enjoy it. Get yourself ready for a strong confrontation. Pull up your pants and look the other guy in the eye and say, come on, let's go. And enjoy it.
And enjoyment it is when all the basics, the fundamentals, the little things, as Paterno likes to call them, have been taken care of.
We like to tell our football team, do the little things right. And the big things will take care of themselves.
And never was that sage counsel more rewarding than in the 1968 28-24 victory over Army. Coach Paterno told his team to take care of the little things, hustle, and sooner or later, something good would happen. But on this mild and windy homecoming afternoon at Beaver Stadium, it would be later, much later, before something really good would happen. With only 2 minutes and 29 seconds left in the game, the undefeated and fourth-ranked Nittany Lions held a precarious 22-17 lead over Army, a team that had beaten them 4 out of their last 5 encounters. Now, Army was set to kick off to the Lions, and Paterno, anticipating Army's penchant for the onside kick, had had his team preparing for it all week long. Again, the little things, the basics. Would they pay off here and now? Penn State's Fran Fisher describes the action.
And they've closed the gap to 22-17, Penn State leading by 5. The kickoff now with Arden Jensen kicking off for the Cadets with 2 minutes and 29 seconds left in the ballgame. Don't be surprised that we don't get an onside kick here. And, of course, the way Army has bounced back in the late stages of this ballgame, Penn State does not want to lose the football. Everybody's lined up now. The signal, and here comes Jensen. It is an onside kick, and it's loose 10 yards down the field. Dave Bradley has a shot at it. He can't get it. There's a pile up. The ball is still loose. I can't quite see. Wait a minute. Ted Qualick has picked up the ball. Ted Qualick picked up the ball at about the 45-yard line. He's got clear sailing. He goes all the way for a Penn State touchdown.
And most of the players on that team returned the following year to fashion yet another undefeated season. Joe recalls that team with glowing praise.
I would describe the 1969 Penn State team in 2 words: pride and poise. Pride to be the best and realization of what it takes to have poise. hard work and preparing well.
Penn State versus Syracuse, Archbold Stadium, October 18, 1969. It's a homecoming game for the Orange Men, and if ever pride and poise were needed, it was at halftime, when Uncotts, Ham, Reed, Smear, Pittman, Surma, and Cates and company went into the locker room behind 14-0. Quarterback Chuck Burkhart tells what happened next.
Very quiet halftime, and Joe just really wanted us to go out there and not get embarrassed. And now, again, you'd have to talk to him and whether he was using psychology or whether he was just stating the truth, because we had not done anything for the first half and what really led to be the first 3 quarters of that game.
Okay, that interference call against Syracuse gives Penn State renewed life. And
Fourth quarter action.
down.
Paterno calls on team pride, and sophomores Lydell Mitchell and Franco Harris respond. Listen now
Chuck
as
Burkhart
Fran
moving
Fisher
the lines
reports
from
the first score.
32-yard line after Jack Ham's fumble recovery. And Penn State down 14, wants to get on the board and on the board in a hurry. Okay, they're out over the ball. Chuck Burkhart calls the signals. A give to Mitchell. Mitchell into the end zone. Touchdown. With 10:18 left in the fourth quarter, sophomore halfback Lydell Mitchell bulls for 4 yards and 6 points. All right, the Lions lining up now for the extra point attempt, apparently going for 2. Franco Harris is into that backfield at fullback. They're quickly out over the ball. Here's the snap to Burkhart. Franco Harris hit at the goal line. He does not get in. The 2-point try is no good. Wait a minute now. There's a flag on the play, and the preliminary indication is holding against Syracuse. So umpire Ed Meyer is consulting with offensive captain Tommy Jackson and quarterback Burkhart listening in. It's just a formality. Penn State will gladly take another shot at 2 points. It is a holding penalty against Syracuse, defensive holding, so it's half the distance to the goal, and the Nittany Lions have another shot at it. They're huddling and come out very, very quickly. Chuck Burkhart crouched under center, calling signals, takes the snap, it's Harris again, and he's into the end zone. A 2-point conversion makes the score. Syracuse 14, Penn State 8.
The undefeated Lions roared back from 2 touchdowns behind to win 15-14 in the fourth quarter. Along with pride and poise, another watchword at the foot of Mount Nittany in State College, Pennsylvania, is courage. And when you come right down to it, courage may be the ultimate legacy that Joe Paterno yearns to impress on each and every member of his team. And isn't it just like Paterno to pick one of his least successful teams to best illustrate his interpretation of the word courage?
When I think about the 1970 Penn State football team, I think about something Winston Churchill said. Churchill said, "Success is never final. Failure is never fatal. The only thing that counts is courage." And that's what the 1970 Penn State football team had, courage.
Indeed, it was a courageous team, a team rebuilding after 2 astounding undefeated seasons, a team desperately trying to claw its way back after 3 convincing defeats in its first 5 games. Former All-American Franco Harris.
I think the big thing was when we lost to Colorado. We turned around the following week and lost to Wisconsin.
And the 1970 team had a courageous coach as well, one willing to risk the predictable bitterness of starters benched, not only in favor of second stringers, but third stringers as well.
One thing you gotta learn in my business as a football coach, that a player will love you one day and hate you the next. But the next day, if you've proven to him that really helped him, he'll love you for it.
And John Hufnagel, then a sophomore third-string quarterback, must have loved Joe Paterno on a cloudy day at West Point that year, because it was Hufnagel's first start in a career that he would top off 2 years later as a first-team All-American. While we're on the subject of firsts, listen to this play in the first quarter.
Penn State moving the ball very well under John Hufnagel. And out over the ball they come with a 3rd and 3 situation at the Army 32-yard line. Fran Ganter, Joel Ramick, and Gary Duell in the backfield along with Hufnagel. Here's the snap. Hufnagel keeps, moves to the left. He's going to turn upfield on the option play. He's got blockers. He's at the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5. Penn State touchdown.
The final score that day was Penn State 38, Army 14. But more important, as Joe Paterno said later, the team began showing pride again.
It was a good year at all.
Franco Harris.
And I guess sometimes you have years like that tend to wake you up and make you realize, hey, better get things together. You see, it's not a thing, I don't think, where you just play for yourself or play for the team, but you play for Penn State University. You play for the state of Pennsylvania. You play for the East.
You take a fellow like Franco Harris. I don't think I ever heard Franco ever in any way ever be critical of a teammate who may not have blocked for him, or a quarterback who may not have thrown the ball correctly, or anything like that. But anytime any one of them have done anything to help him, he's been the first guy to go over to an offensive guy and say, that was a great block, Jack.
At Penn State, there are no superstars. Oh, you'll have All-Americans. You'll have Maxwell Award winners and Red Worrell Award winners. And John Cappelletti is a Heisman Trophy recipient. And Mike Reed won the Outland Trophy for his outstanding interior line play. But at Penn State, there are no superstars. Not Cappelletti, not Reed, not Franco Harris, not Lydell Mitchell. They're all part of a team.
We have some great athletes, but they're very modest, they're humble. In fact, most of them are very quiet. They've got a lot of poise, a lot of confidence, but they're almost on the shy side.
One thing Paterno and his players are definitely not shy about is the subject of ties. And who better than former All-America quarterback, the riverboat gambler Rich Lucas, to describe Penn State's almost loathing aversion to the tie.
I don't think winning's that important. I think you participate, you do as well as you can, you come out as a winner or loser. But I think, and consequently, I don't think there's anything wrong with losing either. But I feel differently about a tie. I think if you have a chance to avoid a tie, you very definitely avoid a tie.
And I just don't think that I would want to coach a football team if I had to play for the tie.
I think that was definitely inbred in the ball players, the fact that you were there to win. And I think
former quarterback Chuck Burkhart,
whether it's high school or college, that's got to stay with you and help you through life.
One game where Coach Paterno went for the win instead of the tie was against Navy in 1974, and that risk resulted in a loss. The Middies were tough in the mud and rain that day, and late in the fourth quarter they led 7-0. Then Penn State scored a touchdown, and instead of going for the moral victory, the face-saving no decision of a tie, Coach Paterno held back his excellent kicker Chris Barr and decided to go for the two-point conversion.
All right, with a 7-6 score now, no question but what Coach Joe Paterno is going to go for two and see if he can pull this ball game out. Penn State with Tom Schumann directing the attack. They're out over the ball, rolling right to pass, looking for Jerry Jerem, throws incomplete.
I've always preached to my boys that there's one thing I want you to do, and that is don't ever be afraid to lose.
Personally, I think I'd rather lose and say I tried to win than to tie and say I actually tried not to win.